I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a public meeting as required by subsection 3412 of the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment respecting 45561 Elm Line. The lands are subject to a concurrent Elgin County Land Division application. To satisfy a condition of severance, a zoning bylaw amendment is required in order to prohibit the construction of a new residential dwelling on the retained lands. Does any member of council have a disclosure of interest concerning this proposal? Seeing none? What method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for this meeting?
Madam Mayor, as per requirements on the Planning Act, notice was given by regular post to every owner of land within 120 meters of the subject land and applicable agencies on Friday, October the 1st. As well, notice was physically posted to the property by municipal staff and published on the municipal website on that day.
Thank you. Mr. McClure, I'm going to call on you now as our planner to present the proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just share my screen. So as has been indicated, this is a public meeting to present a draft zoning bylaw amendment for 45561 Elm Line. As shown on the screen, the location of the subject lands are just south of Elm Line, west of Quaker Road, and to the north you can see the southern extent of the St. Thomas Airport. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment is as part of a condition of a draft approval for a surplus farm severance is to rezone the lands that are retained as a surplus farming severance approval and prohibit that a dwelling be constructed on the retained lands. So part one of the amendment introduces Schedule A to the bylaw, being known as map part 18F. And then part 2 of the amendment designates the lines shown on Schedule A and heavy solid lines as OS1-218. As can be seen here, the larger portion being that OS1-218, and the hatched portion, which I will get into in a moment, being the severed portion where the existing dwelling is located. So part 3 of the amendment introduces a new subsection to the OS1 section of the bylaw, being 8.2.2.218, defines the area shown on zoning map part 18F as OS1-218, provides that the only permitted uses are farm use and accessory uses, and that the only buildings in permitted buildings and structures being farm buildings or structures, but no dwelling shall be permitted. This is a condition that is typically put on surplus farm severance and is a requirement through the province, the county, and the municipal official plan to ensure that there's future residential development doesn't occur in the agricultural area. And then provides for the exceptions to those general sections of the OS1 bylaw for permitted uses and permitted buildings and structures to deal with the exceptions provided through this amendment. Part 4 of the amendment then further designates the land shown on Schedule A in hatch lines as OS1-219. Part 5 of the amendment then provides for an additional subsection being 8.2.2.219, defines the area shown on map part 18F as OS1-219, provides that the only permitted uses are rural residential use, home occupations, and accessory uses, and then the permitted building and structures being a single detached dwelling and accessory buildings and structures. And then again, provides exceptions to the general provisions for those site-specific changes that are proposed through this amendment. And then part 6 of the amendment introduces a new schedule, being Schedule B to the bylaw, that provides for the anticipated consolidation of bylaw 1998, which includes all the amendments that have been made to date through that zoning map, including this, and that's zoning map 18, as can be seen here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McClure. Have we received any written submissions on this proposal?
Madam Mayor, correspondence has been received from Catfish Creek Conservation Authority advising of no concerns with the application.
Thank you. Before opening the meeting to questions from the public, if you're listening on a computer, tablet, or smartphone, please click the raise hand icon. And if you've called into the meeting using a telephone, please dial *9. The questions will be taken in a sequential order. When given the opportunity to speak, please provide your name and address for the record. I will now open this meeting to the public. Mr. Perrin, who's the host, will let me know and he'll let you into the meeting if you're waiting. Seeing no one? One last call. Is there any questions of concern from the public? If not, do any members of council have any questions? Seeing none? Everyone has been given a fair opportunity to be heard. If there are no further questions, please be advised that any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the passing of a bylaw on the proposed amendment should email Diane Wilson at dwilson@centralalgon.org, indicating which public meeting they wish to be notified on and providing their name and address. Those who do not have access to a computer and wish to be notified should call Diane Wilson at 519-631-4860, extension 286, and provide the same information. This public meeting is now concluded. Any amendment to the bylaw will be considered at a future meeting of council. And our next meeting will be at 6:10. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a public meeting as required by subsection 34:12 of the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment respecting 6531 Bostwick Road. The applicants are proposing to rezone the subject lands to permit an additional residential dwelling unit. Specifically, the owners are looking to allow for the proposed use within the single detached residential dwelling that they are proposing to construct on the property. Does any member of council have a disclosure of interest concerning this proposal? Seeing none, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for this meeting?
Madam Mayor, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner of land within 120 meters of the subject land and applicable agencies on Friday, October 1st. As well, notice was physically posted to the property by municipal staff and published to the municipal website on that day.
Thank you. I'm now going to call on Mr. McClure, our planner, to present this bylaw amendment, zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just share my screen. And as can be seen on the screen right now, this is a public meeting to present the draft zoning bylaw amendment for 6531 Bostwick Road. The location of the subject lands can be seen on the screen, north of Bostwick Road, west of Sunset Road, within the northern portion of the settlement area of Union. The purpose of the bylaw amendment is to permit an additional residential unit within a single detached residential dwelling on the property. However, there is site-specific zoning on the current property that was passed a number of years ago to speak to the orderly development of the lands. So in order to address this site-specific provision of an additional residential unit, staff is recommending the repeal of the previous zoning bylaw amendment and then introduction of essentially 99% of the same amendment, but adding a new provision for that additional residential dwelling unit. So as can be seen now, part one of the amendment repeals bylaw number 889, which was the previous amendment on the site. And then part two introduces Schedule A to the bylaw, being map part 8BO, and then has part three designate the lands outlined in heavy solid lines on Schedule A as OS 2-69. So this is the same OS2 provision or site-specific provision that was introduced previously, except there's going to be new text associated with it. So as can again be seen here on the screen, this is map part 8-BO and then the site-specific zoning. You'll note the H on there, and I will get into that in a moment. So part four of the amendment provides for that the section 8.3.2.69 that defines the area shown on map part 8BO as OS 2-69, and then provides for a section that deals with the holding zone, where you use the H to deal with the orderly development of the lands. As this was, I guess, provided in the past or is technically provided in order to allow for early development to deal with like plans of subdivision as an example. This is why the H was placed on the amendment. And then part V speaks to the holding provision itself, and again speaks to the fact that in order to ensure the orderly development of the lands, that one, a plan of subdivision be entered into, and the subdivision agreement is entered into for the lands in question with the municipal corporation, and then that services are provided to the site, being full municipal services to deal with the development of those lands. And then it recognizes that interim permitted uses are allowed on the site, being uses that existing of the date of the passing of the bylaw, one single detached residential dwelling. And then this is essentially the new section that's added as part of this amendment, is that one additional residential unit within a single detached residential dwelling as permitted in this subsection. And then speaks to the removal of the H symbol, requiring an amendment to the bylaw itself. And then part five, in anticipation of the eventual consolidation of bylaw 1998, has introduced Schedule B to the amendment, being zoning map part 8, that includes all of the changes made to the zoning maps by all amendments to bylaw 1998 to date, including this amendment, as can be seen here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McClure. Have you received any written submissions on the proposal?
Madam Mayor, correspondence has been received from Cattle Creek Conservation Authority stating no objections to its approval.
Thank you. Before I open the meeting to the public, if you're listening on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, please click the raise hand icon. And if you've called into the meeting using a telephone, please dial *9. The questions will be taken in a sequential order. When given the opportunity to speak, please provide your name and address for the record. This meeting is now open to the public. I will be asking Mr. Perrin, who's acting as host, to let me know and to let you into the meeting if there is someone. No hands raised at all?
No.
Okay.
Oh,
Does any member? Yes, I'm sorry. We do have one. Okay. Would you go ahead? Ella, it says on the thing, would you go ahead, state your full name and address, and then go ahead and ask your question?
hello, Mrs. Mayor. My name is John Zagorski, and I live at 6633 Bostwick Road, just west of the land we're talking about, east, sorry. Would you need any other information on my site, like my phone number?
No, that's quite adequate. We just need your name and address. Go ahead.
As I understand it, proposed zoning change is done planning to build a subdivision on this land. Am I right?
The land is, sorry.
Kevin wants to answer.
Kevin, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, the proposal to date is just to add a site-specific exception to allow for additional residential dwelling unit on the property. Any future plan of subdivision will be required to go through a Planning Act approval. So as a previous application back in the early 2000s, the lands were looked at for potential future growth. But at that time, there was, I guess, no a desire to move forward with a development. So the zoning was put in place just to ensure that when there is going to be some future development proposed, that they would have to go through a plan of subdivision process and that there would need to be adequate services available. This is essentially just allowing for an additional residential unit within a single detached dwelling that would be already permitted on the property.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. We changing a zone, I mean commission planning to change a zoning of 26 acres just to build one residential dwelling.
Mr. McClure?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, the existing zone already would allow for a single detached dwelling to be constructed. Okay. The current zoning wouldn't allow for that additional residential dwelling unit. So what you would normally see as like a basement apartment or that within a dwelling, there were provisions passed by the municipality that allows it as of right in fully serviced areas. This union is not fully serviced, so in order to allow it to occur, they had to go through zoning bylaw amendments to demonstrate that they can meet the requirements. So this would the proposal, as I'm aware, would be having a kind of like a residential suite within their existing dwelling, so that they could have an additional residential dwelling unit within that single detached building that they're proposing on the property.
I understand, but my problem here is that if we need to build a single dwelling, why do we need to change a zoning for 26 acres of prime farmland instead severing a piece just to build this dwelling, right?
Go ahead, Mr. McClure. We are not changing the zoning at this time. Go ahead, Mr. McClure.
If I may, I'll just share my screen to bring up the, maybe easier just to show on the screen.
Okay.
So as can be seen on the screen right here, so this entire area that I'm showing in with my cursor is designated for residential use. And the parcel itself has a site-specific zoning on it that is almost identical to what I presented today, except for the one provision at the end that here, this sub 3. So it would already allow for one single detached residential dwelling on the property. They're just requesting that an additional residential unit be within that single detached residential dwelling. So what they've proposed to do as part of this application is construct a dwelling somewhat where my cursor is back here and have a driveway go back. There's no severance of lands at this time, in that any future severances or that would need to be done through a plan of subdivision as was provided through the zoning bylaw amendment. So right now they're looking until, I guess, the owners in that look to do something long-term for the property. They're looking to construct a residential dwelling that's currently permitted in that back corner of the property itself.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kravitz. Councillor Kravitz, you wish to speak?
Oh, yeah, so what the gentleman is doing, he could always build a house on this property. That wasn't the issue. What he wants to do is essentially build a house with a granny flat or something similar to that. That's what the zoning bylaw is for. It's not to add the house. The house was always permitted.
I understand. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Is there anyone else, Mr. Perrin, that has a question? Okay, seeing no one, does any member of council have any questions? Seeing none, I assume there are no members of the public waiting to come on. So everyone has been given a fair opportunity to be heard. If there are no further questions, please be advised that any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the passing of a bylaw on the proposed amendment should email Diane Wilson at dwilson@centralelgin.org, indicating which public meeting they wish to be notified on and providing their name and address. Those who do not have access to a computer and wish to be notified should call Diane Wilson at 519-631-4860, extension 286, and provide the same information. This public meeting is now concluded. Any amendment to the bylaw will be considered at a future meeting of council.
Wiesz, o co tu chodzi? Oni mają taki zoning, że oni na tym mogą.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a public meeting as required by subsection 22(1)(b) of the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to a proposed official plan amendment respecting 191 Carlow Road. The municipality is requesting minor revisions to the policies for the Harbour Community Facility designation to permit the potential uses of the Dominion of Canada building. Does any member of council have a disclosure of interest concerning this proposal? Seeing none, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for this meeting?
As per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was posted on the municipal website on the Let's Talk Central Elgin project, Port Stanley Harbour secondary plan on October the 1st. Notice was displayed in the weekly St. Buzz advertisements, St. Thomas Times Journal, and the Elmer Express during the month of October. Current planning applications page of the municipal website.
Thank you. I'm going to call on our planner, Kevin McClure, to present the official plan amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just share my screen. So it's been indicated, this is a public meeting to speak to a revised draft official plan amendment number 9, which was the Harbour secondary plan. Although this is specifically to the Harbour community facilities policy section of that official plan amendment that we had done a public meeting to previously. So I'll just get into the specifics. So as is indicated, there was an expression of interest by the municipality to look at the Dominion of Canada building as shown on the screen right now. And as part of that process and some of the proposals that were put forward, it was put forward that some minor revisions to what were presented previously within that Harbour community facilities policy sections need to be addressed just to ensure that potential proposals could move forward. And specifically within item 9, which is subsection 4.6.6.4, which is speaking to Port Stanley Harbour in the secondary plan, there's this section or subsection being 4.6.6.4 F2. For the purposes of just some clarity, I know that at the reports section, when we were dealing with this at council, there was some concern that certain sections of the Harbour community facilities designation would be removed. So just for clarity, I've bolded on the screen what is being changed or added to that policy section. So as can be seen on the screen, that sub 2 speaks to permitted uses within the Harbour community facilities designation. It still allows for the indoor, outdoor, active, passive, tourism, recreational, leisure, active transportation, conservation uses, permits a wide range of local, regional scale parks, accessory buildings, etc. And this is where some of the changes come into play. So in the indoor market, in an existing fully enclosed building containing activities such as food market with stalls and a bake sale for prepared food and baked goods, meat, fish, vegetables, flowers, and or fruit products, boutique stores for decor, apparel, or other general or special retail goods, a microbrewery or micro winery with accessory product sales, takeaway food outlets, sit-down restaurants, and or banquet/meeting facilities to serve local residents, businesses, tourists, and other visitors to Port Stanley. And then a new section was introduced that provides that to facilitate the needed front-ended investments in the existing fully enclosed building, this the Dominion of Canada building, by the market building operator to bring it up to regulatory standards to accommodate an indoor four-season market. A lease-to-own option for the building to help attract a qualified private sector group will be considered by the municipality. And then again, adding the last 2 bullets that were provided previously, which deals with outdoor storage of goods and materials aren't permitted within the designation. And then notwithstanding the foregoing provisions with respect to other uses pertaining to the operations of commercial fishery where goods and materials must be stored outside, such uses shall be permitted subject to the appropriate health and safety measures. So those 2 sections here, as can be seen highlighted, are what is changed or is being proposed to be added to the Harbour secondary plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McClure. Have you received any written submissions on this proposal?
No correspondence has been received, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Before I open the meeting to the public, if you are listening on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, please click the raise hand icon. And if you've called into the meeting using a telephone, please dial *9. The questions will be taken in a sequential order. When given the opportunity to speak, please provide your name and address for the record. I'm now opening the meeting to the public, and Mr. Perrin will notify us and let you in if you raise your hand and wish to speak. Seeing no one so far. Okay, do any members of council have any questions? Seeing none, one last chance. Do any members of the public have any questions? Still none? Okay, everyone has been given a fair opportunity to be heard. If there are no further questions, please be advised that any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the passing of a bylaw on the proposed amendment should email Diane Wilson at dwilson@centralelgin.org, indicating which public meeting they wish to be notified on and providing their name and address. Those who did not have access to a computer and wish to be notified should call Diane Wilson at 519-631-4860, extension 286, and provide the same information. This public meeting is now concluded. Any amendment to the bylaw will be considered at a future meeting of council. We're going right into the next meeting, so I will call this meeting to order. This is a public meeting as required by subsection 3412 of the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment respecting 250 Colborne Street. The purpose of the application is to rezone the lands to construct an addition to the existing single detached dwelling for the purposes of additional living space, a private garage, and an additional residential unit. Further, they are proposing to permit the mooring of boats along Kettle Creek and operate a sea-doo rental business on the property. Does any member of council have a disclosure of interest concerning this proposal? Seeing none? What method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for this meeting?
Madam Mayor, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner of land within 120 meters of the subject land and applicable agencies on Friday, October the 1st. As well, notice was physically posted to the property by municipal staff and published to the municipal website on that day.
Thank you. I'm going to call on Kevin McClure, our planner, now to run through this proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just share my screen again. Again, this is a public meeting to present the draft zoning bylaw amendment for 250 Colborne Street in Port Stanley. As can be seen on the screen, the subject lands are on the west side of Colborne Street, north of Hetty along the channel of Kettle Creek. And the site-specific amendment is looking to introduce a site-specific business zone that recognizes the existing residential use to permit marina facility use and exempt parking requirements for the marina facility. As was indicated or noted in the introduction, an additional residential dwelling unit is also proposed as part of this application. However, as the municipality has introduced new regulations that would allow additional residential units in any zone that would permit a single attached dwelling, the single attached dwelling section of this amendment would then allow for the individual to provide an additional residential unit as well. So part one of the amendment introduces Schedule A to the bylaw, being map part 3AS, with part two of the amendment designating the lands on Schedule A and heavy solid lines as B1-25, as can be seen here. Part three of the amendment then now introduces a new subsection after 10.2.2.24 of the bylaw, being the business section of the zone, being 10.2.2.25, defines the area as shown on zoning map part 3AS as B1-25, adds for an additional permitted uses being residential use and marina facility, and then provides for additional permitted buildings and structures being one single attached dwelling and accessory buildings and structures for the uses permitted in subsection 10.2.2.25.2, and then provides for a provision of off-street parking where no off-street parking is required for the additional permitted use in subsection 10.2.2.25B. And then in anticipation of the eventual consolidation of bylaw 1507, Schedule B is provided as part of the amendment being zoning map 3. That includes all the changes that have been made to zoning map 3 to date by other amendments, including this amendment, as can be seen here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McClure. Have you received any written submissions on this proposal?
Madam Mayor, correspondence has been received from Kettle Creek Conservation Authority advising of concerns regarding flooding. It states that in review of the planning justification report, it does not appear that the associated flooding hazards affecting the subject property have been adequately considered and or addressed to support the proposed land use changes and subsequent development as proposed. It also states that in order to further consider the proposed land use changes and subsequent development, the applicant should be required to demonstrate and achieve the two-zone floodplain concept requirements to the satisfaction of the municipality and the Conservation Authority. This piece of correspondence has been circulated to both council and staff.
Thank you. Before opening the meeting to questions from the public, if you're listening on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, please click the raise hand icon. And if you've called into the meeting using a telephone, please dial *9. The questions will be taken in a sequential order. When given the opportunity to speak, please provide your name and address for the record. I am now going to open the meeting to the public. Okay, Debbie, I see your hand and Mr. Perrin has let you in. Would you please state your full name and address and go ahead with your questions?
Yes, Debbie Bonjay, 253 Colborne Street. I would like to say that we reviewed the information that the planner did, and we agree with the concerns that are expressed. In particular, we have spoken to a number of neighbors that live on Colborne Street, and we have big concerns about the parking in particular. If a Sea-Doo business is added, then it's felt that probably you'll need 12 more parking spaces, and at present time, there is not enough parking for all the boaters and their visitors as it is. We find that people park in our driveways, they block our driveways, they block the mailboxes for the senior people that need to drive up and get their mail. And so we have big concerns about the parking and wondering what the solution is going to be for that. The other concern is one of our neighbors is a retired firefighter, and he expressed concerns and said that they had to do a lot of rescuing when it came to the Sea-Doo business, and that the taxpayers are paying for all this rescue work. And if the firemen are tied up with rescue work, then how are they going to do the other things that they need to do? So we would like answers to that. And also the size of the actual residential building and what impact that's going to have on flooding in the area and ice, because the actual building that is proposed is quite a wall along the water itself. And my understanding from someone else is that there is a stream that goes in the land underneath that area and goes across the property on the other side of the road as well. So I'm wondering about if you're building on that area, if there's going to be an impact in terms of flooding also. I guess that's our key concerns. And I appreciate the opportunity to ask questions and to express those concerns. So thank you.
You're very welcome, Debbie. Mr. McClure, do you have comments or answers for Debbie?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Parking was a concern that staff had raised throughout the consultation process, and it was reflected in the report itself. Same with the flooding concerns as well, and that were echoed by the Carlow Creek Conservation Authority today through their comments. While it was identified that the building itself would be outside of the floodway, the building itself is within the flood fringe. So there's policy requirements to show how they're going to be addressing that. Through the consultation process, there were some discussions that it may be able to be mitigated through floodproofing measures based on the extent of what was being proposed. As part of that process, the Carlow Creek Conservation Authority recommended that a topographic survey be undertaken just to get a better understanding of the extent of the depths that they were looking at. And it's my understanding that now, seeing the extent of the depths on certain portions of the property, that's where they've come back now to request that additional information is looked into to deal with what potential impacts that could have on neighboring properties if you are putting such a large building on the parcel of land. And again, that was something also that we had brought up through the staff report, was just that it appeared to be an overdevelopment of the site, given the I guess what's being proposed and the extent of building envelope.
Thank you. Is there a set limit, Mr. McClure? There is a certain percentage of the land that can be built on, is there not, on a residential lot?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this is where staff had recommended that or suggests that an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment are required because the lands are currently designated for residential use. However, the mix of uses that is being proposed within the residential designation wouldn't conform to the policies. So it was suggested that they go through and redesignate the lands to actually address what is being proposed. I guess the difficulty is that the lands are zoned currently business 1 zone, which allows for more intensive development within a commercial area. So right now there's a bit of a disconnect between the designation, the current designation and zoning on the property, and what the individuals are proposing on the parcel of land. So in order to address this to all of the concerns, that's why we had suggested that an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, along with future site plan control, is undertaken for the property.
Thank you. Does that answer your questions, Debbie?
Yes, we appreciate the fact that these concerns are actually being looked at, and thank you.
You're very welcome. Is there anyone else, Mr. Perrin?
No.
No one else? Do any members of council have any questions concerning this? Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To Mr. McClure, through you, just in your presentation, if you don't mind sharing your screen one more time, I believe it was the second to last page. I just wanted to make sure that I understood what was on there correctly.
This here?
Yes. So the bottom bullet point, off-street parking. So is this suggesting that with their proposal as it stands today, that should the zoning bylaw amendment go through, that they would not be required to have any off-street parking?
So I had vetted this through the applicant's agent last week, just to confirm whether or not this would be sufficient to address what was being proposed. So what's being presented today is what the applicant, I guess, proposing to council to allow for their development. This is not something, again, that staff supported through the staff report. But again, it's the opportunity for the draft bylaw to be presented to council as is being proposed by the applicant.
Thank you. I personally believe there's a lot more work to do around this to decide whether it's right or wrong.
I would concur with that as well, especially I think the parking is a major issue, as the person living on the street said. And I know that it's in the flood fringe where the building is, but that area has flooded right across the road many times. Are there any further questions from the public? Any more from council? If not, everyone has been given a fair opportunity to be heard. If there are no further questions, please be advised that any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the passing of a bylaw on the proposed amendment should email Diane Wilson at dwilson@centralelgin.org, indicating which public meeting they wish to be notified on and providing their name and address. Those who do not have access to a computer and wish to be notified should call Diane Wilson at 519-631-4860, extension 286, and provide the same information. This public meeting is now concluded. Any amendment to the bylaw will be considered at a future meeting of council.